Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Just About Managing podcast with Chris, John and myself. Hope you're all having a good week or had a good week, and welcome back to our chat this week. We've got two topics again this week we're going to discuss again. One work related one that we'll touch on a little bit in a second as well because it was a result of last week's conversation, but one work one about leadership and management of the future and what do we need to be most focused on or focused on improving. And then the second topic we're going to talk about is our sort of best, most spontaneous trips, holidays, decisions that we've made in our past. Just a little talk on that. I think first of all, guys, it was a great reflection or great reaction, should I say, to last week's episode with Dorothy on there, I thought.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Yeah. Go on, Chris. We're talking over each other. Go on, you go first.
Just amazing, right? Like Dorothy is just such a warm, positive person, and irrespective of being a podcast, it's just great just to talk to her, right? And on any and every subject, she's always like really uplifting, but also in a really discreet way, really quite challenging, right? So it's just like, like this secret, like stealth Dorothy, kind of like getting under the skin, asking you tricky questions when you don't really realise. But yeah, it's just fantastic. I think the response from the listeners has been really good. Personally, I really enjoyed it. It's a real wake-up call for us around like guests and that level of engagement, right? It's just amazing.
Yeah, no, I agree, Chris. I think I was actually quite nervous having our first guest on the podcast, but I absolutely loved it. It sort of upped the ante, but it did make us think about in terms of not only how we're interacting, but also in terms of, okay, where are we going with the podcast? What's the content do we really want to have on here? And how do people get the most from what we're producing? And a lot of my thought this week has been about, okay, oh, that's really interesting. Or we could do this or da-da-da-da. And, and even like spurring me in terms of, going sort of challenging some of my own mind in terms of research and direction and just going and listening and watching other people as well. So yeah, thank you to Dorothy, because I think A, it was incredibly insightful having you on, but B, I think in terms of prompting our minds in terms of the evolution of the Just About Managing podcasts was brilliant.
Definitely. I think she just came across as natural as well, didn't she?
Yeah.
It's the first time I spoke to her for over a year, and it was just like talking to her back when we worked together. It was just completely natural, so it was brilliant, actually. Brilliant. And again, great reaction from people on it. So it did really resonate.
So if you're listening to this and you've not listened to it, gang out there, please go back and have a listen and let us know what you think. Right? It's just amazing. We're very open to ideas around future guests and format and whatever. Right? So yeah, brilliant. And hopefully, I'm going up to London like next week or the week after, and hopefully I can catch Dorothy on the on a Monday or a Tuesday around near Tower Hill. But
you're going to be there running as well.
Not for a run, no chance.
Can I? The last thing I was going to add, Lee, was you were saying about feedback. We continue to get some amazing feedback on the podcast, and also particularly those even better ifs in terms of what we could be doing or focusing on, and we really do value that. And we very much do see that this is a learning journey for us in terms of how we're presenting the subject matter, the content, etc. So please do keep them coming, because it does guide us, and we do truly value that as well. So yeah.
Definitely. No, it's a great shout, John. I think it's like I say, as we evolve this, we need that feedback almost, don't we? Those suggestions on what we can do better and even better if so spot on.
Yeah.
Definitely. No, good shout. Excellent. So our first topic today that we're going to talk about was a bit of a follow on, really, from actually Dorothy's question she asked us on the podcast last week that I thought was excellent and started to get us thinking a little bit about the future. She asked the question specifically about what does leadership in 2030 look like, and what do we need to start tapping into there. And her point was around turning on the power of diversity within our teams. And I know we all touched on little bits in there, but I thought it was another good topic to delve into a little more. I'm thinking about what does that future of leadership look like and management look like, and how do we look at improving towards that as we move further forward. So I don't know what your thoughts were, guys, on that one.
Can I start with a few statistics I've jotted down on the back of the envelope here?
Statman's in.
So we don't get confused. So let's talk about generations to start with, shall we? So, and these are rough dates because I think depending on which country and opinion. So Gen X is 1966 to 1979, 1980-ish. Millennials, 1980-ish to 95/2000. And then Gen Z or Gen Z, depending on your vocabulary and accent, 95/2000 onwards. And I think obviously there's one of the key differences that I just wanted to kind of bring out, and I think is relevant, is obviously the millennials, which are the first generation of digital natives. So a lot of the management in the workforce at the moment are still, there's obviously a few baby boomers still out there, but the vast majority are Gen X, like our good selves here on this call, hosting this call. And obviously we, as a population of a generation, have gone through that migration from non-digital to digital. And the last stat, unfortunately, I couldn't get 2030, Lee, but by 2025, 75% of the workforce will be millennials.
God.
So there you go. A little bit of a scene setting that I thought might help the conversation or hinder. Who knows?
You never know. Preparation, though, John. Preparation.
You're impressed.
Definitely. So, what do you, with that in mind, what do you think sort of the keys are to the next set of leadership skills or improvements or enhancements that are needed, do you reckon?
Go on, Chris. I've just been gobby, so you can go first.
Well, skills of the future. Where do we go? Right. I think there's this model. You know me. I love models. Right. So I'm going to talk about model T-shaped skills of the future. Right. So you can watch this on YouTube in about like 4 minutes, like in a cartoon related to a chicken, which would actually be far quicker than me describing it. But, so anybody who's interested in this stuff can look up T-shaped skills or wings, like on YouTube, and look at it, right? But the way this kind of gets described in terms of skills is there are core skills, a bit like a trunk of a tree, right? And they are deep skills that you would need in any role related to that technical role, whether that be, whether you're in a factory, whether you're a farmer, whether you are in, professional services, whatever it is, there's like core skills. Then around that, there are other key things that you need to know that you would also need to know in the future that are still incredibly relevant, right? So risk control skills, governance skills, other things related to change, project management, program management, all that kind of stuff. And then wrapped around that, kind of like the tree, the bark of the tree is how those skills interact into whatever the industry you're in, and that's where the technology comes in, right? So I'm sure we'll touch on more, but just talk high level first. That bark is around the technology, so whether that be like cloud or AI, and I'm sure we can get into some of that in a minute. But like fundamentally, the land that tree sits on is fundamentally changing and fundamentally shifting, right? So John, you're absolutely right. One of the key things when we're thinking about the skills is the age demographic. But I think also around things that I touched on like last week, right? The location of that talent, of those teams, of those markets is just massively shifting, like hugely shifting, right? So where are the people? 1.4 million in India, 1.4 million in China.
Billion.
Loads of those are like under 25. There's more people in each one of those countries than the Western world put together. This is like massive, right? So the land of opportunity and the skills and the interaction for that stuff is like huge, right? So that the tectonic plates of change, of influence, of money, of power, of creativity, it's kind of moving like massively, and it's far less Western, right? I think, and that's got to be something that's baked into how we, everybody kind of like thinks about the future.
There we go. We're all going off to watch YouTube now whilst we're one eye on the podcast.
But we've not spoken about the T-shaped bit of the skills yet. But like fundamentally, there's some like core skills, the technology and the land it sits on, and then because I'm like, I'll keep going, right? Like on top of that tree, the actual fruit that you need growing on the branches, stretching out the wings on a bird that would like enable you to take off. That's all around how you make that work like on a really human level. Curiosity, communication, connection, resilience, those skills, like fundamentally you need to be able to cope with that change, manage that change, connect on that change and join up all the dots, synthesize, which is far easier to say, even though I can't say it, than do, particularly because the teams are going to be like, and the people are like all over the world, right? It's like mad. Yeah, really exciting, but really, really different.
Yeah. I think you're spot on. The bit that I think latching onto from that, Chris, as you say, is the ground and the trunk, if you like. I'm not saying they'll take care of themselves, but again, they're sort of the fundamentals of moving organisations forward. I think, as you say, the key when it comes to management and leadership is that fruit aspect of the people, the human aspect of it. Again, how do you really get them in their best environments to be at their very best, with that generational element in there that you talk about, John, as well. And this again touches on what Dorothy mentioned last time a little around the diversity element of any type of diversity in there. How do we really tap into that and turn on that power? But a lot of it's going to be about that human connectivity you mentioned there, Chris. I think particularly from a leadership and management perspective.
Yeah, and I think your point on the diversity element is, if you kind of look at the evolution of our careers and the expectation upon us as leaders, as we've progressed, that drive awareness of diversity and inclusion, and that drive to challenge our own mindset to think about diversity within the workforce, within your management team, has changed exponentially. And that kind of next generation of leaders in 2030, the expectation upon them in terms of that as a natural piece of muscle memory, and using that to complement and strengthen their leadership capabilities, it really takes that to the next level. And I think that the outstanding managers and leaders will be the ones that naturally think about, have I got the right diversity across my workforce that is giving us the strength and depth and capability, and are we being inclusive in terms of how we're thinking about where we're drawing our talent from, etc. That is, I think, it doesn't matter what industry in the world you're looking at, we've kind of been going through an evolution of that, and still are. But I think that's, for me, is one of the standout attributes of the depth of leadership and management is going to be centered around yes, I do think about that, and I find it naturally for that to be part of my muscle memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's just like a bit of an elephant in the room, right, around diversity, inclusion, equity, and actually, I'm sure there's people listening to this, or maybe people think like, why should I care? Why do I really care about diversity? Does this really make any difference? Okay, and why? And the interesting thing is that if we think now, if we were to roll back the clock, we all had hair, and it's like 25 years ago.
Longer.
What we now know around how we engage, like on like tablets and phones, the growth of the cloud, the growth of AI already. Actually predicting forward what you need to know for success, it's so uncertain. Yeah, the disruption in the market, the disruption across all industries is just going to be very big. I mean, there's some massive topics, right? So, I mean, AI is much more than just narrow AI or ANI, right, around specific tasks or typing something into like chat GPT, then you get onto general AI, which is around like the problem solving, synergizing, like, what's already known. And then going on to like ASI, super AI, right? Which is, solving problems, predicting things in advance. Now, we just don't know what that's going to look like. But AI isn't the only kind of like massive big theme out there. I mean, as we learned from COVID, and what can actually be achieved in a short space of time in a window, biotech is just massive, right? So how do you understand what's going to go in the biotech space, the difference between the biology of humans and of the planet, and using technology to solve for that, whether that be cloud seeding, the movement away from fossil fuels, going on to like big stuff like climate change, and then on to like other pieces like data and privacy. This is like massive. But you're right, there are like fundamental things that are just big. Media literacy, social influencing, all of this stuff. These are just huge topics, and they're all going to be moving all at different speeds, but faster than now. So that means, why should we care about diversity and diverse thought? Is, as society and as organizations and as people, we'll only get to better solutions and be able to synthesize all of those changes in all of those spaces by having more inclusion of thought to get to the right answers. And that's a challenge, right? And I'm just a massive advocate of talent and teams across the globe, right? Because I think there are some really talented people. I think it'll be really interesting. So when the leaders of the future, it's not about ratios. It's about being able to cope with all of that change and make things happen. So I think when you are in those spaces, I think there'll be a lot more leadership outside of the UK and outside of the Western world. I just really do. And I think that will be very prevalent in like 25 years' time. I mean, China and India are a lot bigger now, but they'll be massive, by the time I'm like pop my clogs.
I think you're spot on, Chris. And it's that, going back to that diversity element, one of the things that sprang to mind as you were talking there, and when Dorothy mentioned it last week as well, was, some of the work, what attracted me, if you like, to the work I'm doing with Kianis when I left the corporate world. Part of that really resonated from my sort of corporate experience in there, where one of the things they talk about is, from a leadership team perspective, when they're working with exec teams, etc., is effectiveness the power of team. And that's this point of, does every person in that leadership team or in that exec team make everybody else better? And, certainly from my experience, when I look back on sort of my corporate life, when I look at teams I was in or was part of, or the leadership teams above us, that happened in pockets at times. But a lot of the time, partly because of the way the organisations were driven on performance and reward, etc., you didn't always see that where, person A over here would make person B better, because the focus was on them being the best they could be for their team. And I think part of that, to the points mentioned there, is when we look forward to going future, when we're tapping into the diversity element and learning from the different generations that are coming through. And some of this goes back to the sport piece. So when you look at effective sports teams in there, you look at Man City particularly, sorry, Chris, but you look at Man City particularly, the players they bring in, yes, they bring in some superstars, but everyone they bring in is there to make everybody else in that team better. And that seems to be the ethos they then buy into in there. And I think if we can start to tap more into that and saying, okay, when we're bringing this team together, is everybody really focused on it, making everybody else in their peers a better version of themselves as a leader too? Then I think we'll start to turn on some of that power of the diversity element as well. And we really start to learn from and share with each other. I don't think, again, you may have different views, but I don't think we've always done that to maximum potential in the corporate world in the past, partly because of the way that sort of performance and reward structured as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that to me, Lee, kind of naturally and nicely sits alongside the whole kind of emotional intelligence framework. So that the whole concept around the individual value contribution and the makeup of the team and how the completeness of the power, it magnifies the power. I think that actually, again, I think often in the corporate world, people still today, and I believe that that the most successful leaders and managers in the future will have ingrained into their DNA the fundamentals around emotional intelligence and how that drives how they manage people individually and how that drives the way that they lead and influence as well. And it sort of surprises me even to today that people don't necessarily understand the true power of tapping into that with leaders. I think people naturally, there's natural leaders, but actually there's a lot of people that that manage and then go on to lead through evolution. And they could be significantly better or significantly more impactful to take that time and step back. But I think that going back to my generation kind of starting point, I believe that when we look at your millennials and your Gen Zs, that need for as a manager to have that true depth of emotional intelligence becomes that much greater because of the communication style is so different to what the natural communication style of a Gen X. And I think the expectation of those, I think particularly a Gen Z, being the expectation of being understood actually also means that you've got to, as a manager, be able to look at those, the different dynamics around, awareness and recognition, and how you motivate, etc. So all those different elements become the tools that you have to really exemplify with.
Yeah. I think completely. I'm sorry, Chris.
I'm going to say something controversial.
Never.
We'll edit it out afterwards, Chris. Don't worry.
Yeah, if we don't agree, there was a nice pause, so we can cut.
So I hear you, and that's all good, right? But fundamentally, you still need to deliver what you're there to do. All right. So I think these are all. There's so much to do, right? And it's like tricky, but like one of the key things will be to get the balance right as a skill, right? Between the hypothetical, as ever, prioritizing between what you'd like to do, how many things you'd like to do, understand and hear everybody and do all this other stuff, but actually getting the balance right. Because I think people are really learned around how things should work and they learn a lot more. So actually being able to control the inner critic in your head as a leader will be massively important. So actually building resilience, building up your support team, that's going to be really important. So there's going to need to be some realism and some thinking around actually what is urgent that I must do, that we must deliver our core purpose of our role, of our team, for our client, for an organization, for whatever it is, versus the important investments you want to make with your team. So I think one of the key things will be getting the challenge right, as ever, in terms of balancing your time. I think no matter whether you're like, whatever one of those generations, I do think on the whole, people genuinely do try to do the best for their teams, for their organizations, and leave things in a better way. It's just not easy, right? So I think balance is just, that is key. Particularly because if you can't manage that in your own head, how can you manage that with like anybody else, right? So I think resilience is one of those like future skills, like massive, and you can help yourself definitely, John, Lee, everybody, by building up your support team, building up your. This isn't just a plug for us, but building up your internal support of friends, inside and outside work, your inside and outside of work mentors, and getting people to coach you, kind of who you trust, who can get stuff done, right? So you can practice. But that balance piece is like really key, because I actually think people know what good looks like probably better than ever before, and that will create its own pressure to be that good. And I think that's tough. Yeah, you can learn this stuff, if you're self-motivated, probably faster than ever before. But can you actually deliver and execute at that level? I don't know. I don't think anyone can to that level, right? So, yeah, what a challenge! What a challenge! I'm glad I'm not in it anymore.
Excellent, and that's not too controversial. I think we can keep that in, probably, can't we?
Yeah, we'll let him have that one.
You didn't klaxon me, so that's good.
You hold the klaxon, Chris.
I do.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. It's a great topic. Any sort of final thoughts or tips even that you would give yourself who are in those leadership positions for the next stage of what's coming, do you think?
Communication. It's all about, I think everything is about understanding people, maintaining strength of communication, and the different dynamics of communication and roots of it is, for me, is like fundamental baseline. And then, because all of that feeds, it's a common thread almost across what each has spoken about. The quality of that communication, whether you're a manager or a leader, and obviously, communication is obviously is a two-way street. Is as much as you that what you're seeing, you're hearing, as well as you're saying. To me, that's the baseline to everything here, and you got to open yourself up to that.
Yeah, great point.
It's really tricky, guys, right, as we go through all this stuff. But someone in a role, a management role or a leadership role, it's only for a moment in time. And I think just to remember that you've got a role in a team, whatever role you have, but it's never your team. You're just part of it. So, you don't have to carry that can on your own. It's a lot more fun to all get together and kind of like carry it up the hill and celebrate at the top. Yeah. So, yeah, I just think just try and be kind to yourself. Let other people help you. I wish I'd done that earlier myself, right? And that's a real strength to get other people to help on the journey, right? It takes quite a lot of humility. I'd certainly, blimey, I hardly have it now, but I certainly didn't have it when I was in my 20s, right? I just thought I had to be me and doing whatever. So that's just mad. It's just too much pressure just to try and remember that no one expects you to be that finished article like now or ever, because you can't be, because it's just moving so much. So you've got a role in the team, but it's not yours.
Yeah, that's great points. And for me, it's touching on what both of you said there, I think, is is my if I was still in that space, I think my advice would be, and this probably does sound biased because of where we are now, guys, actually as well, but it's probably invest in yourself, and that's invest with your friends, like you say, Chris, one of the people around you that support. If you're in charge of a business, invest in your leaders and invest in your leadership team. So that may mean bringing people in to support and coach and drive them on, but really tap into, invest in how you can really get them working as a team that support each other and make each other better. That core effect of the power of team there for me.
John, it goes back to that thing that's almost like, not that you've got a tattoo of this, right? Not that we can see, but, how do you set people up for success, right? And including yourself.
Yeah. Great summary. Excellent. Great discussion, guys. I think that just about wraps up the first part of the podcast. I think that was interesting and useful and insightful. Yeah. It certainly was for me. Thank you. Stick around after the break, and we're going to be talking a bit about our best spontaneous, or some of our best spontaneous decisions we've made. So we'll see you after the break. I'm looking forward to this one. Welcome back, everyone. We enjoyed the first part of the podcast, and second part now, we're going to be talking about some of our best spontaneous decisions. Again, work-related, non-work-related, whatever they may be. And again, none of us have a clue what we're going to talk about here, so it could be interesting, embarrassing, humorous, anything. Open to the floor. Who wants to share first?
I'd like to make a complaint first, because you changed the rules on the question from what you put on the WhatsApp chat last night, because you put about spontaneous holidays last night.
Yeah, that can be a decision though as well. So that's
but you see, you've expanded the scope. It was, and now it's kind of confused me about what I'm going to talk about. So
sorry.
Yeah,
you can talk about holidays or farming.
No, that's what I was struggling for, because I'm. No. Go on, you go first, and then I'll work on my subjects while we're at it. See if I can improve.
Go on then, Chris. What was yours, do you think?
This is really, really straightforward for me and easy. I never wanted to go and work overseas, and then within about 2 hours of walking onto the floor in KL, every ounce of my being wanted to move 13 hours across, 13-hour flight, 8 time zones, to work until 3 a.m. in the morning in the middle of the jungle. Yeah, it was like just like a deep, visceral kind of like listen to your gut, not listen to your head, because everything in your head would go, do you want to work into the middle of the night? Do you want to do this? Do you want to uproot a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old? I just really wanted to create as best the place to work as possible and help people get, jump out of bed and think, I want to work here. And I could see that there was an opportunity, but I also really just, it was like deep. It was like purpose type, calling type thing that was just, I believe I could help make this more than what we've currently got. And what that team gave me and my family was the start of an 11-year adventure from, KL to Dubai and then on to India before we came back. And that was an amazing experience for all of us. But from a work perspective, like, I always used to ask for 2 things in my teams, that the best teams I would be in, they would play to win. They would be brave, they'd be courageous, they'd ask questions, they'd, think of the future, they would be fair to each other and fair to everybody. But the thing that the KL guys and the Manila and everybody gave me over time was they gave me a third thing that I demanded then in teams, and I thought I got this before I started working there, but I never did. Got to have fun. It's the magic dust that when things get tough, kind of like makes the pill taste sweeter. It's just good, right? So I'm really grateful to all of them, for everybody, for people supporting me through those times, because I wanted to make a difference, and therefore kind of put up my dukes and kind of like got in there and scrapped with people to make things better, because it was not easy and it was not a supportive environment, particularly on the ground. So, but that was where real growth came from. So it's really easy. When you said what's the most spontaneous, it was spontaneous. It just was like, crikey, I want to do something about this. And you know what? They did something about me. Fantastic. As much as I did my best in that job. And that was just mind-blowingly different, and I loved it.
What was the, just out of interest in that, Chris, what was the one thing that triggered you to go, I want to be here?
People were in roles for money and they weren't bringing the best of themselves, and that sounds really cheesy, but the best teams, the best things you've ever been part of, you can be in sports teams, but the morale is just crap, or it just doesn't work, and you be in other teams and it just works really well.
Yeah.
So the desire was there, and I wanted to show people there was a different way, and there was a way to have more fun and to be yourself and do things. I can't really describe it, Lee. It's just like, there's a bit like, God, this is old. There's a bit like the Blues Brothers movie when John Belushi and the light pings on him in the light, and he goes, I've seen the light. It was just like that. I can't really describe it. It's more a feeling.
Do you want me to try and describe it for you?
Yeah, go for it, John.
Because obviously Chris was the one who came back to me and said, I think I need to go and work in KL. And which was my absolute saviour that he decided to do that, because that's what I was going to ask him to do anyway. And but before Chris took over running the team there, the team were workers. They didn't have a purpose,
right,
and they did a job. And they didn't feel empowered to make change or challenge. And that is all, it is as much embodied in culture as it is about self-belief and vision of that they have a career. And that's what Chris instilled in them in his tenure in that role, which is I believe why he's so proud of what he achieved there.
It's brilliant. Do you know what? I think it sums you up, Chris, actually, but it's quite it's different to what I expected there, because I expected when you said I walked in and that was it, I wanted to be here, I thought it was almost that feel you got because everybody was so, great, so buoyant, such a great culture, and it attracted you in there. But it was more, not the opposite of that, but it was that fact of actually, I can make a difference here. I want to make a difference here. And that drive almost, which probably sums up your want to change things and have an impact.
I mean, I think it comes back to the first question in the first half, right? I always viewed that as I wanted to be part of that team, but it was not mine. Yeah, I wanted to help be part of an environment where people wanted to come to work genuinely, right? And play my part in that, creating that atmosphere and that space for people to bring the best of themselves, right? And yeah, it was never my team. It's the same in India and elsewhere, right? But like, at times, you're the right egg for that hole, right? Or whatever, yeah? And it was that was terrible. Terrible. So that was not, well, whatever. So there we go. I'm really proud of that work, and yeah, really proud of being part of that team. Yeah, it was really cool, really good.
Brilliant.
So mine's going to sound really shallow now after.
I was just about to say the same with mine, John, so I feel bad now. I should let this go last.
Oh dear.
Well, the good thing is you're not going to talk about pegging, John, are you?
So yeah, my I'm going to go with my original thought, because despite I got too distracted with Chris, and I haven't come up with anything which is more deep and meaningful. My lifelong love of learning took me down a route which, so I've always loved cars, and during this, before lockdown happened, I paid for a car to be restored. It was an old classic car, and every so often I would go down to the workshop where all the work's been done, and I'd watch this guy. And you quite, because I think coming from a background of being relatively logical in breaking processes down into components, you start to realize that, well, actually, this isn't that complicated. It's just logical steps. So I got this stupid idea in my mind that actually I'd like to buy and restore a car myself. And I wanted, because I already had the car that was restored is like it's a sports car, so it's not that practical. So I decided I wanted a practical car that was old, that I could put dogs in the back, basically. And long story short, I ended up buying, and this is my on the spur of the moment thing, I had a brave pill because I was away skiing on holiday. See, that meets Lee's criteria. And on the spur of the moment, because my wife was not with me, I bought a 1969 Toyota Land Cruiser in Australia and paid for it to be shipped back to here in the UK.
Wow.
And that turned out, it was myself and my next door neighbour and my father-in-law. That was our kind of lockdown saviour, because we spent many, many hours basically stripping this car down to literally a bare bone chassis, and then building it back up again, and learning a lot from YouTube and reading articles. And Rob, my old next door neighbour, is significantly more mechanically minded than me, but I've learned a lot along the way. But yeah, and so what was that? 3 years later, we have a fully drivable car that is restored and is great fun. But and I'm incredibly proud of it, because I've never done anything mechanical in my life, and wow. the concept of learning tricks and setting bearings and all sorts, but yeah, so it's that I'm proud of it. But it was a complete spur of the moment thing, that I had a brave pill because I wasn't at home and I was sat in an airport when I decided to buy this thing. And yeah,
fantastic. I knew you got that. I didn't realize you had that imported from Australia, though.
Yeah. So that was another sad part of the very first few weeks of when we were in lockdown here in the UK, and we weren't allowed to go anywhere or about. So I used to go out for a morning walk, illegal morning walks. Used to go with my next door neighbour Rob, and we did socially distance apart, but we used to do a 3-4 mile walk first thing, just sun was rising every morning, and we would be there on the app tracking where the ship was that was bringing the boat, the car back every day. So yes, there you go. That's mine.
That must have been such an unbelievable offer for that car. Right, it must have been like in the middle of. Why on earth did you get it from Australia?
Because I wanted. Well, so basically, Toyota Land Cruisers were never made in this country, and a lot of the ones that went to Australia have either a lot of them been driven into the ground because they were such reliable cars.
Yeah.
The one, and then there's a lot in Indonesia, but the ones you tend to buy there have been badly restored. And I basically wanted a completely unmolested, unmodified version, which are really, really hard to come across. So mine's got original engine, original gearbox, original wheels, It's still, even now, got the original 50-year-old paint on it. So, yes, I can
Shows how
believe
well they're made as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, we'll even put a photo of it. I have a TikTok channel, but we did in the early days of restoration and then failed to keep it up. But I did get at one stage a few thousand followers on there. So yeah,
Struth, John, that's brilliant. Yeah.
and
what
the
accent was that, Chris?
I'm not quite sure.
It's like Neighbours 1989 with Carly and Jason.
Yeah, but yeah. So the it's called the FJ40 is called Bruce. That's what I named him. Yes, it's definitely a boy, not a girl vehicle.
Fantastic. I love it. What a story though. I can't believe that. You bought that completely blind then, obviously, and just off pictures and from a private seller.
And videos. Yes, he was a collector. Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal. I love it. So mine, going on to mine was, again, I feel bad for this because it was definitely not on your level, Chris, at all. I would like to say it was when I left the corporate world and went to this, but that's a bit cliche, isn't it? But mine was so this goes back to 2004, and I was actually working in Sheffield for those that are in Sheffield will know this building, Griffin House of HSBC, which was a proper old concrete building. Awful building, to be honest, like a maze.
Is that like Wernham Hog, Lee?
So is that what, sorry?
Was it like Wernham Hog? At the office? Was it like that?
Yeah, pretty much like that.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
And then we used to, at lunchtime, particularly on Friday, we'd go to the local walkabout pub to watch the football or whatever was on at the time, or the cricket if it was on. And this was going back to, so again, 2004, this was the Athens Olympics we went to watch. Now, I was quite fortunate in that an old friend of mine from school actually went to the Athens Olympics to compete. And so we went up to walkabout to this pub to watch him in the semi-finals of the badminton. So his name's Nathan Robertson. So he was competing with a lady called Gail Ems in the mixed doubles, if you remember him. And so we went up to walkabout to watch them, and he won the semi-final. And it was like, oh, that's unbelievable. That's absolutely unbelievable. And so I rang a friend of mine. I'll give a shout out to him, Gary Paulson, another friend that went to school with, and was talking to him on the phone. So, did you watch it? You know, this is fantastic. He's in the final and everything. And Gary was a coal miner at the time. So lived in Nottingham, but was working down in Coventry down the coal mine. And we said, oh, it's brilliant. Wouldn't it be fantastic if we could actually see the final? And bearing in mind, this was probably, because of the schedule, it was probably about 2 days later the final was. And we're like, yeah, I don't think we'll get tickets though. We couldn't get out there if we got tickets. And anyway, I shouldn't really say this now, I can probably say it now. On HSBC's time, I then went back to the office and got onto the internet in those slow sort of dial-up speeds as they were in those days, and looked at Athens Olympics, and sure enough, they'd still got tickets for the final, for the badminton. And the tickets were 15 quid. Unbelievably. You can imagine what the tickets were like everywhere else and where they've moved on from there. But 15 quid and still available. So I rang Gary back up again. I said, Gary, you can get tickets. And he's like, yeah, you can, but it's in Athens. It's like, yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Let's buy the tickets first. Worst case scenario, I've lost 30 quid. So we'll see where we go. So I bought the tickets all online so you can pick them up at the ticket office in Athens. And then got on to flights. How can we fly out to Athens? So the tickets cost us 15 quid. We then got return flights to Athens for about 400 quid a piece, down from Heathrow at 2:00 in the morning. So we then said, right, sod it, only get to do this once. So it was a day return. So we had to drive down. So me and Gary, I went back to Nottingham that night, booked a day off quickly at work, and drove down to Heathrow, flew out to Athens, landed at Athens airport, got a taxi then to the venue, which we had no idea where it was at all. Just asked the taxi driver, where's the badminton? And he dropped, and this gets unbelievable, dropped us off outside.
Dropped you off in Skiathos, did he?
He dropped us outside the venue. We jumped out the taxi and we had to go and collect our tickets, obviously. So we're walking towards the ticket office up towards the venue. It's an unbelievable atmosphere again. This is probably at this point, it's probably about 9 o'clock in the morning. And as we're walking up the venue, bearing in mind there's people everywhere flooding about, who happens to be walking next to us is Nathan's mum and dad, by pure chance.
Wow.
And so they obviously knew us, and we started chatting away to them. They couldn't believe it. We'd gone out there, picked up the tickets, went to watch Nathan in the final. Unfortunately, he lost the Chinese pairing in there, so he won silver. And we got to see him. He came up to see us, just say, "Oh, thanks for coming out." And then obviously it was, I don't know if you remember the Athens Olympics, but we didn't win anything for ages there. So they won the first medal of the Olympics. So as soon as they won that, they were just swept off to TV interviews left, right and centre. So we never actually got to speak to him properly, apart from he quickly came up to see us in the stands. And then we went to the Olympic, I don't know what it was called at that point, but it was that Olympic drinking village. So it was just where all the fans went, the fan zone. Had a few beers, got a taxi back to Athens airport and flew back home again, a 4-hour flight back home. So it was literally, I think we probably had about 10 hours in Greece at the cost of about 450 quid each. But we got to see a friend of ours in the final of Olympic Games, which was unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. And then we caught up with him properly when he was back again and got to see the medals, etc.
Wow, that's superb. What a great story.
Very, very something.
So, you got anybody off for Paris in like a month?
Well, do you know what? Funny enough, I spoke to him a couple of months ago, and he's now training. He's now moved into coaching, and so he now coaches one of the British doubles pairs that are hopefully going to Paris. I don't think I'll get out there for that one, unfortunately, but I'll keep in touch with him and see how it goes. You never know.
One.
Nice you never know.
Good.
Excellent. Any other spontaneous thoughts to share before we close off at all, guys?
No. Just I need to be more spontaneous.
That's a bravery pill, John. That's a good one. Right, you keep that. That's good.
I want the next episode. I want to hear about how you came back and told your wife then about that decision you'd made, John.
Safety in numbers.
We've just bought a car and we've now got to import it from Australia.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's how John has mastered the description of why it needed to come from Australia.
There's a long story.
Really down pat, didn't he? Well, if you need this paint, and perfect.
This is an investment.
Yeah. It is. This
is an investment. I love it. And same with you, Chris, actually, as well, coming back and did you breaking it to your wife about, I want to go to Manila?
No, she always said, if you want to go, if we ever get a chance to go overseas, we should. She's more adventurous than me.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Teamwork.
Support network again, Chris. You mentioned it before. Makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
100%.
Brilliant. Oh, excellent. Thank you for sharing those, guys. Really enjoyed listening to that. Thank you. We hope you enjoyed listening to the podcast as well, and just about managing for this week. And remember to follow us on the various channels on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and on LinkedIn. Subscribe.
And like.
And share. And feedback and suggest, because we've loved the feedback and suggestions as well. So please do keep them coming in. They make a huge difference. And we're always open to those even better ifs, as we said at the beginning. So thank you, everyone. He's been John Lloyd. He's been Chris Dingle. I've been Lee Smith. And you've been listening to Just About Managing. Goodbye.